Good morning, everybody. Hope all is well. Really excited to kick off this webinar today. We got an amazing group. This is a first for Naturally San Diego. We switched the Zoom meeting to a webinar, so give us a little bit of leash as we manage the technicalities here. And we're also gonna give it some time in the morning as we let some folks get onto the webinar. We do have a poll just for us to get an idea of who's really in this community. This is all an experiment that's evolving in real time, and so we would appreciate if you guys take a peek at that poll and submit some of that data there, so we have a better understanding of our community. And that goes really to the heart of what we're doing here in Naturally San Diego. I'm from San Diego, and this has been a city that I think is uniquely positioned to be a leader in the natural foods community, and it already is. We have a lot of great brands here, and that's a big draw to how this all came together. And we're looking to go deeper there with our community in San Diego with the founding of Naturally San Diego. Just a quick backstory for folks that are new, and this is your first time logging in. So there's 15 people that came together to found Naturally San Diego, all natural foods leaders. And the idea is just to galvanize and grow the community. I think San Diego is unique because we're an outdoor city. And so we're going to blend this thesis of being really tight with these events, but also really exploring how we can be closer together as we do activities in San Diego. And as we wait to schedule our full live launch party, we're doing our best here to bring digital content that we think is relevant just to serve our community in the best way we can during these times. And so really that is the thesis of why we're here today. We had this idea that there's a lot of brands and people that are struggling with mental health and struggling with how to kind of organize their life in all this chaos. And we kind of created this panel for us to try to dive deeper there. And we're going to have a really interesting conversation. So with that, I'll kick it off, and I'm not going to do justice in introducing everybody here. I am the single male dominated by a lot of really talented women. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But I do have just a primer of what we hope to accomplish a bit today. And the thesis is there's a lot of feelings everybody's having, and as these stay-at-home orders progress, we're embarking in this odd phenomenon that's a globally shared experience of social distancing and self-quarantine. And the best way we've heard it put is it is a shared storm, but very different boats. It seems that everybody is on a different boat in this sea. And we're going to hear that today with some of our panelists. And some of the feelings that we're hearing is feelings of not being enough, feeling guilty, feeling grief, distracted and overworked, isolated, connected and disconnected at the same time, having a sense of survivor's guilt, self-imposed guilt for folks that are younger and just working harder because they want to preserve their jobs, and then this overcompensation and uncertainty. So there's a lot there. So what I would love to do is have our panelists here, if you guys could all just introduce yourselves and give a little about your background, and also touch on any of those feelings from you personally, if you're feeling any of those, and also how are your companies feeling that you guys work at. And I think that would be a good way to kick it off. So maybe Julie, if you want to start.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Fabricant. I'm the Vice President of Digital Marketing and Strategy at Force Brands, which is really a cross-section of creative, performance, and now more than ever, experience, not only internal for our team and how we're kind of going through what's it like to work remote, but also as a resource for the brands that we work with and a lot of the candidates that we place. Really rethinking everything that you do digitally to create culture, experience, connections, and re-envisioning all of this. And personally, it's been a whirlwind of emotions. We've made some changes internally that have made us really efficient, and we're moving really fast. So there's a lot of productivity and a lot of problem solving at the same time. But then there's also changes that we made as a company and saying goodbye to what we've done in the past. So, it's always good to move forward. And, it's every day is a different emotion on that side. Yeah, that's me.
Great. Ellen, you wanna kick it off?
I'm Ellen Bradley Wendell. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in private practice doing therapy, counseling for individuals and families, and marriage counseling for over 30 years. I also I own Valencia Relationship Institute. I have a business partner here in Valencia, California. We have 12 therapists that work for us, and we help nurture people's most precious relationships. We work a lot with children, adolescents, and teens and adults, but we also work with a lot of first responders, firefighters, and police officers. And we did a really quick transition. One day we were in the office, 12 therapists. We have two offices in Valencia and in Burbank. And the next day we're all doing telehealth. So it was a quick transition for all of us. We had always talked about doing telehealth. Here we were forced into it. It's really working beautifully. People are feeling so supported. And so as we transition back eventually, we will probably do a hybrid, and it will be able to serve a lot more people.
And Alan, any of those feelings resonating with you or your office that we talked about?
All of the above. We were talking earlier how I am even though I'm working from home and doing telehealth, I'm much more tired, emotionally drained, physically drained, and also I feel like that not only am I caring for clients, but I'm also caring more for our therapists and making sure that they're okay and emotionally and physically and all the things, because everybody is, like you said, we're all in this storm, but we're all in different boats, and everybody's home situation is very different, and working from home and making sure that we can facilitate that.
It's a good segue to Lisa. Lisa, I know you have 2 kids, and your feelings you're probably on a certain boat. So share a bit about who you are and how you're feeling in your company as well.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Shields. I am the Director of People and Culture at Organifi. We are a superfood company based out of San Diego. And I think there are a lot of different emotions that our team they've been experiencing, from being very disconnected and isolated, especially people who live at home. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have some parents, not very many, who are working full time and managing a household. I, in particular, have a 5-year-old who, I'm kind of running a daycare and also homeschooling a 2nd grader. And so I'm feeling in many ways more productive than I've ever felt. Because like when you're busy, you just got to figure it out. And emotionally, I am just so exhausted and drained at the end of the day. I'm working many nights until 10 or 11 o'clock at night with early mornings. So yeah, a lot of emotional turmoil that I just haven't been used to in my life. I feel like I've had a very stable routine, and this has just thrown everything for a loop. So
yeah. Jessica.
Hello. Hi, my name is Jessica Tully, and I am a client strategist at Force Brands, and I manage our beauty, health, and wellness division. Force Brands is an executive recruiting agency, but we really focus on strategic hires, organizational design, and building out world-class teams. And a lot of change in what those teams look like, I think, over the past few months, given COVID, and a lot of them going remote. So we really have been focused on creating world-class remote teams, and Julie's been a big part of that as well. Personally, I have to go with everyone else's thoughts here, which is a lot of different emotions, right? At Force Brands, we have parents, we have people quarantining alone, we have people that are able to quarantine with family. Personally, I've been able to be with some family, which I think has helped, but as a single person who lived alone and was pretty set in her ways, that in itself has been a transition, right? And getting used to being around people all the time, and really navigating when I need personal space and boundaries. And I think that goes to work as well. We've seen a lot of companies thrive, as well as we've seen a lot of companies face some serious challenges. And really, we all want to help support and grow our brands, but we also need to take that time to have that mental clarity. And I think one of the major struggles I face is creating those boundaries sometimes, and when to know when they're needed.
That's fantastic. We have such an interesting panel because the panel itself, I think, represents what most companies are probably made up of. And I'll give you guys a story, and I'll let the panel kind of dive deeper. When we started this, we jumped on, and it was cathartic for me to say, hey, those with kids, aren't you guys struggling, not being enough, can't be there? And Lisa's sitting there shaking her head. And then Julie and Jessica are like, no, I feel none of that. Right. And I love that we had a very honest conversation. So I would love to just dive deeper there. So Julie, what are you feeling? Because you had a very different perspective than what Lisa and I had. And I feel like this is very representative of companies. So share.
Yeah. I mean, I totally have seen what's going on with the people who have to handle both children and the workspace. But for me, I've never had more time to be focused and have more time in the day. It's made me reevaluate how to use my day for marketing, right? I have creative time in the morning, meetings in the day, dinner, and then I kind of come back on to finish some creative work again. So I am loving this kind of control of my day, to be able to kind of tune out when I need to, schedule when I talk to people. And, I don't have the distraction. I feel I get off of work and I'm not going to watch television. I'm going to another digital product, that I want to work on, or another, long-term thing that, that we've been putting off for a while. So I feel like, with my personal life on hold, because I really can't weigh in that right now, my work focus is what's keeping me kind of engaged, and keeping some positivity, because I can manage what I do to be productive and put things out to the universe in a work environment. But personally, I can't do anything to control that right now. So I feel very motivated. I love challenges, and I love doing workarounds when something's in front of me. So this type of work environment of this pandemic has been extremely, makes me very clear, makes me very focused. Here's a challenge, I'm going to work around it, and I am going to spend a lot of time doing that. Maybe on the other side, I'm like, hey, maybe I wish I had the distractions, but I love children. But for right now, for me, I don't feel guilty now about not spending time on my personal life. I don't feel guilty now about not dating. I can kind of say, nope, we're going to get everything done that I've always wanted to get done, and there's no excuse now.
And this is where I think the profound contrast of what people are experiencing in this pandemic is actually surfacing, right? So when you said that, and I've heard this across the board, especially at our company where there's a lot of millennials, who don't have more additional family responsibilities, and they're calling me that first week like, hey, just want to chat. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have time to chat right now. Like every second I need to be multitasking. And I think this is where it's so important to have empathy, right? And where I may not have a ton of time and I feel like I'm constantly out of breath, I know a lot of people on the opposite end of the spectrum are feeling isolated and lonely. And it's this whole thing about comparison being the thief of joy and happiness. I think this is where we can really exercise our empathetic skills and know that even though we're in different boats, we are all challenged right now in one way or another.
Yeah, that word empathy has come up a couple times. And I heard somebody say it's hard, how do you balance getting things over the hump, but also having empathy for the myriad of boats everybody's on? And I guess my question back to you, Lisa, is do you feel like you have a good understanding of the boats people are on in your company?
I do. Prior to COVID, I actually did a lot of coaching with our team, just personal life coaching. And so, which is why people are calling me just to check in. And I do feel like across the board, I have a pretty good pulse on who is feeling isolated, who's ready to go back to work, who is actually not wanting to go back to work. And it's because, throughout the day, I'm constantly checking in with people on Slack. We have a spreadsheet set up for our people and culture team. And we actually make sure that we are touching, in terms of communication, everybody each week, somebody from our people and culture team.
Yeah, we have a similar structure as well to make sure
Awesome.
Everyone's doing all right.
Yep.
Ellen, question on your end. How do you see this rise, which you're probably seeing on your practice? Is this going to continue? Or will, as people go back, their mental health will recover, right? Is this a long-term thing or a short-term thing for folks that are experiencing some mental health challenges? Maybe it's not mental health, maybe it's just chaos, right?
I think it's for all of us. Yeah. So I think even some people that are more prone to anxiety and depression prior to all this, it definitely has exacerbated. I do think that, we don't know when this is going to end, even though that we're going to reopen. It's going to, we're going to have, like, everybody's talking about our new normal. I think that we have to manage our expectations, not only as, employers, not only as, team leads, but also managing our expectations for ourselves. And one of the things that we have to promote, and you all have such, dynamic personalities, is promoting this positive confidence that it'll trickle down to your employees, because I think, again, managing our expectations that this is going to be a long process. It took a while to get here, and it's going to take, that amount of time to get over the hump, and to just not think that we're going to get back out there and everybody's going to be okay. And one of the things Lisa said is empathy. And I'm just wondering, the big question to ask, our staff and ourselves is, what is it that you need from me? Like Lisa, the first thing I was going to ask is, what would feel like empathy to you when you're in a different situation than those of us that don't have kids
Right.
at home? I mean,
Yeah,
what
I think,
would that look like?
oh, sorry. Yeah, I think I'm really fortunate. I have probably one of the most empathetic and understanding bosses ever. She doesn't have children. And the first thing she said to me when this happened is, let's be in communication. You let me know what you need. The beginning of our week, we kicked off with, like, how are you doing? Has anything changed? Like, let's constantly be in conversation. And Ellen, like you pointed out, asking, like, what do you need, right? How can we support you? Such a simple question, but even asking that to me is a clear demonstration of being empathetic.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. And I think this is a big reason for Naturally San Diego. One thing to call out is please ask questions here in the chat box or the Q&A. We'll do our best to address those as there's threads that come up. But it's an interesting transition that, a question for you, Jessica, is, thinking about empathy, and at least in the Naturally San Diego community and broader, we're all leaders in this great industry. And there's change, right? There's a lot of change happening. We're seeing that from strategies. We're also seeing that from headcounts and changes in careers and hiring and cleaning up. So what are you seeing, Jessica, as like the tip of the spear, companies reorganizing? And then my call out to the San Diego community is, how can we help people find new spots if there are some cuts?
Yeah. And, back to Lisa's empathy piece real quick. I think as you're building on teams, and people are still hiring right now, right? And taking on new team members, and being aware if someone that's joining your team has family or has a kid, and making them feel comfortable and heard and understood. And again, what do you need to be successful? So it's not a fear of, oh, I have a kid, I can't let this affect my ability to perform. It's, oh, we all have children, and this is becoming more normal that children are on conference calls or in the background, or that noise is heard. And I think it's a great thing that's happening. I think it's okay to be a working mother or a working father, and for people to know that it doesn't need to be like work and family. I think bridging that gap is super important. Sorry to go off, Matt, but back to the question about, reevaluating what powers your business, right? And for many companies, that's changing. And I think, Elisa, you guys are a digitally native company, but a lot of brands were not, right? And the world's ever changing into this more digitally native company, because we can't just go to the store and pick up the products, or if we can, there's sometimes a fear of doing that, right? So how do you get your products to your consumers during this time? And where we're seeing that shift is a lot of our brands are really focusing on their digital and e-com, right? The Amazon.coms, the Walmart.coms, the Jet.coms, the Shopify, and getting experts in there, because if they didn't do it prior to this, they're rushing to do it now. And that talent is through the roof. Like, people are seeking that out. And the next place we're seeing a lot of growth is operationally, right? How do we get our products where they need to be, given maybe that there's limited drivers, right? Or facilities are closed and we need to shift, our processing or how that works. Or, wow, we were doing $1 million a month before, now we're doing 3 million. And how do we increase that operationally? So that's where I'm seeing a lot of growth.
That's interesting. Lisa, the question for you is, as all this changes and we have these Zoom calls and everybody is zooming around, trying to be more engaged, do you feel that this has had a negative, positive, or neutral impact on culture? And the second follow-up is, what are you guys doing? You guys have a pretty unique culture to boost morale and engage folks during this time.
Yeah, great question. I think that we've seen both. There's been obviously some negative impact. We're a very, very tight-knit organization. And when you walk through the doors, there's a palpable energy that people feel. That is our culture, right? And we hug people. We never even, like, strangers walk through our door and we tell them, like, you're about to get hugged, get ready for it. So with the transition to Zoom and being remote, there is that connection that we've lost in many ways. That being said, where we've been able to get more connection is about a third of our team was remote before. And now that we are all remote, they're saying like they've never felt more connected. And that prior, it was really hard to hear on conference calls and Zoom calls, and people that were in office were talking over each other. So I think that this has brought the team together so much more in many ways. And how people and culture, how our department has really attempted to continue and improve the connection. We do a morning meditation every day, and our CEO, he has been like the culture champion through all of this. Every event and activity we put on, he is there. So he leads the morning meditation. We randomly started a burpee challenge, and we thought we were going to be in quarantine for like a month. And the idea came up, we're like, yeah, let's do 100 burpees a day as a company. And we, every day at 3:00, like no meetings happen, people jump on our Zoom line and we do burpees. And we just passed 33,000 burpees as a company. And that little piece of connection, like and then we end with a plank hold. And during that time, we ask a connection question, right? And these little ways that we are just continuing to facilitate connection while we are apart has been pretty powerful. We do, weekly yoga, which I've heard a lot. And then one other thing that I do want to share that's been pretty powerful is we have a transformation program. And what this is, each employee, we kicked off with pick a habit that you want to focus on over the next 2 months, right? And every other week, we lead a transformation workshop where we bring in guest speakers. And we divided the team up into groups of 4, and then they connect every week to just talk about, challenges, how they're doing in their practice, and anything that's come up. And so I think forming these like subgroups to just ensure that people feel connected has been really powerful.
I absolutely love that transformation idea. I might just have to steal that one.
Oh, please.
That's great. We've really been doubling down in our training and development in this downtime to really build culture and trust, whether it's the leadership team having personal coaches and mental health support, and just our team in general, having some training and development options, taking some classes, doing some side things, and appreciating that, that can connect us all. Let's really lean in this time.
Yeah, Julia, you mentioned something really interesting around survivor's guilt, and that's the first time I heard it, and it was from you. In all this transition, can you speak to that a little bit, and how that's, how you're thinking about that, but also for other people that are probably having that feeling but never really contextualize it that way? And
yeah, and it's not just myself. I have this conversation with a lot of colleagues, whether in my own company or in other companies, in different roles, especially in places where you've been a long time. It's this, I still have my job. I am still going to work. I still have a lot on my plate. I'm very proud of what my team is doing, but we made some changes to our team, and that's been really hard to still really be proud of what we're doing and say, okay, the past is the past, and there's some people on our team that aren't here anymore, and it's not performance-based. And I think that's the real hard thing in this environment. This is efficiency and rethinking how we're working as a business. And I've had that with multiple colleagues and mentors who are saying that, I have to focus on, I have a job, I'm working really hard, we're doing some really great things, and we've made some changes that maybe we should have made, to some of the processes we have in the company because we were forced to now. And there's been attention in some other areas. For me in digital, this is my universe. I mean, you know, this is a moment of digital and everyone kind of getting on the same page. So I have a little bit of survivor's guilt of like, everyone just caught up to where the digital thinkers are. But then also realizing that a lot of people lost their jobs and there's a lot of people unemployed. And, you know, we have a campaign that we're working on at Force Brands called One More Job. And it is to help people find employment. It is really, if we have one more person find a job, sorry, that gets emotional.
Yeah.
Sorry, we all move forward, right? We keep it going. We don't let this pandemic kind of beat us down.
And Julie, so going deeper there for this community here, because that's the whole purpose of what we're building here. When we hear of, like, I guess the better question is, when you guys place people, is that because, like, is there a common thread that as a community we can help stitch that together? Is it somebody introduced somebody to Julie or Jessica, or is it, you know, a direct connection that, like, how do we help people? That is it just, hey, introduce, what's the food force recommendation there?
We have at Force Brands, you know, we're all consumer goods, all consumer brands, food, beverage, beauty, tech, you know, fitness, health, wellness, cannabis, lots of cannabis. There's a couple different ways. We do have a job board, forcebrands.com/jobs, which has thousands of opportunities that you can apply to on site. But please reach out to Jessica and I. We do also have on our website a way for you to upload your resume, send us a note about what you're looking for. We get it immediately. It gets sent to our team immediately. We also have a new capability of making little videos about what you're looking for and about yourself as part of the intake. So then that's easy to share with someone and say, hey, you know, this is who I am and this is what I'm looking for. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us personally or to our website at forcebrands.com. You know, our team, there are a lot of companies hiring and we're really trying to connect the dots there.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best parts of my job is finding people jobs, right? And seeing them grow in their careers and watching them take companies to the next level. But one of the challenging parts given COVID is having a lot of talent reach out to me that they've recently lost their job or they've been furloughed, and it's not performance based, right? And we're doing our best to find as many people jobs as we can with this One More Job campaign, and whether that's frontline workers on our job board or whether that's through our executive search side, you know, managerial level through C-level. But it goes back to that guilt, right? Of, wow, like, I'm thankful I have a job. I have this blessed opportunity to be able to find people opportunities and grow brands. But then I also wear this weight or this struggle of hearing all these amazing, talented people that have recently gone through this struggle. And we're doing everything we can to support people. And a lot of it is introductions and word of mouth and talking to our partners and saying, hey, if you know anyone that needs help or support right now, please have them reach out and we'll do our best to do what we can to help.
Alan, you said something to me that stuck, was, you know, never miss an opportunity in a crisis, and how a lot of times this is really cathartic for people to make change. Can you speak to that more, and then also more the emotional side of how people can get through making change?
So one of the things that you and I talked about was that crisis is the best time for change. And now I talk about that in people's relationships, in marriages, in life situations, that we can never go back to the way things were. We will never have what, you know, it will never be that. Now we're in the midst of a crisis, and this is the time for us to make tangible changes for the future. And so one of the things, you know, just talking about nurturing your relationships. We talked about that we're doing social distancing, but we're really doing physical distancing. And the social distancing is like a misnomer because we're really trying to promote social togetherness through physical, you know, while we're physically distancing. But I just think that when we talked about earlier about, you know, thinking about the things that you do have control over, we don't have control over the virus, we don't have control over the lockdown, but what we do have control over is our mindset. We can live in fear, we can live with anxiety, or we can transition our mindset over to hope, positivity. And I don't mean to sound like Susie Sunshine, but when you talk about the universe and you talk about, you know, the law of attraction, just being able to have that hope and, you know, and that survivor's guilt, and just feeling, you know, so grateful that you do have a job and that we are working, and the fact that other people don't is just that we have compassion for other people, we have empathy for other people. Doesn't mean that we're being selfish.
Yeah.
And then we talk about the self-care, emotional self-care, physical self-care. When you have children at home and you've got two, that's one full-time job and you've got your other full-time job. Healthy eating, exercise, thank goodness for Zoom and having book clubs and doing dinners over Zoom and making sure that you're talking about things aside from the pandemic. Use laughter and humor. It doesn't mean we're being disrespectful. Laughter and humor, when we smile and we laugh, it literally changes the chemistry in your brain. Then you can choose, it becomes a habit.
We've learned so much about all of our colleagues because of the Zooms and the connections. We've learned the ones who love to cook. We've learned that someone has a weird doll collection. That's not true, but just maybe agree with the math. That's my parents, it's not me. But I feel like it does put a lot of humanity in this time, and we've taken a pause and realized we're all human in all of this, and it affects all of us.
And Ellen, I think everybody smiled when you said that, so thank you for sharing that. I sure did.
All our brains just changed.
It did. I'm not kidding. Yeah. What are some tips, to go deeper there for when that fear, anxiety, isolation, depression, when that sinks in and there's moments of that? What are tips you can give the community to say, hey, take a deep break? What are some tried and true that you give to your patients? Some free advice right now.
So one of the things is I have people writing in a gratitude journal. Matt, you and I talked about like the impact of this, how can we look at the positives, the impact that this is having. Every day, write down 3 things that you're grateful for and 3 things that you're struggling with. Start with the positives. Reach out, limit your social media time and your TV media time, because all we're hearing, especially on the TV, they don't really share the good stuff. They share the stuff to get us, to get our attention. And so then it creates more panic and fear. Limit your time on social media, because even though there's not a lot going on that people are missing out on, it's still transcending a lot of what we're missing out on, or people's lives are so much better than ours right now. And then reaching out to, for social connections, especially, our older clients, people that are, living by themselves, that really is social isolation. Reaching out for yourself and for others, because we feel helpless that we can't be with, family and friends. So what is something that you do have control over? And that's reaching out. I'm hearing from people, and I don't know if any of you are, that I haven't heard from in such a long time.
Yeah. People
are trying to reconnect. Lisa, you talked about meditation. I believe strongly in guided meditations. I even do that with kids. I'm doing a lot of teleplay therapy over Zoom, and you have to be very creative to hold their attention. Guided meditations, podcasts that I'm having people do. I'm having people, I keep sending them worksheets. We do a shared screen and just things to focus on where do I see the hope? And and also to feel like, when we talked about the empathy, like reflective listening, when, if people are saying that this is just so hard, you just reflect back like you're looking in a mirror, the same thing. I really understand that you're feeling A, B, and C. That must be so difficult for you. So, and also allowing people, even though we're strong and we're, business people, letting people nurture us as well.
Those are really good points. And I'm saying, because personally, as a manager, I feel like I always have my solving hat on and not my mirror hat. It's probably a man thing too. And you guys could also, yeah, that's right. So, Lisa, I think evolving on that, we had this big conversation around how all this evolves, right? And when this started, we were in a different space, and that was 2 weeks ago. And I feel like it's changed already, and it's going to change a lot in the next 2 weeks. And one of the threads we pulled on was how we return back to work, right? Mm-hmm. And how that may be different for all these different boats that people are on. And one of those being, some folks might be enthusiastic and eager, and some may want to continue work from home. And then there's the parent element, of if schools are closed and I got to go back to the office, how do I do this? So Lisa, how are you guys thinking about this at Organifi? And if you can kind of speak on some of those points.
Yeah, and in listening to this conversation, one of the things that I really strive to promote at Organifi is not work-life balance. It's actually work-life integration. And what I've been loving seeing during COVID, it is like these midday breaks where people are going out for a 30-minute walk, or doing the Burpee challenge, or doing these things throughout the day. Because if we're really honest, at least for me personally, like I'm connected from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. And I'm a workaholic, so it may not be everybody, but I love the fact that we've demonstrated that people can be home and be productive. And I think the conversation that we need to get into right now is actually opening it up to team members and seeing what worked for them, right? And not just assuming that we have to go back to in the office 5 days a week, because some people actually want that, right? And some people want 3 days in the office. So what I'm going to propose, and again, we come from a more flexible work schedule where people are allowed to work remote. And I think that it's going to be maybe more of an individual conversation with team members. And it's like, if you're doubting that people can work from home, that person probably shouldn't be on your team to begin with, right? If you already don't have that trust, there's a deeper issue here. So like I've had no doubt in my mind with anybody on my team that they're going to be just as productive and efficient at home. Now they might miss the connection, and that's a different thing. But I do think that there's going to be a revamp in like a more customized workforce and style of working. And that's what I'm going to propose to senior leadership.
We're actually working on our initiative to be, really robust, best-in-class workplace, remote workplace, because business leaders are going to have to look at this and say, does my team really function remote well? And is this an option for everybody? And, like maybe there's some companies who will be like, this is awesome. We don't need all these rents in all these different locations. I'm excited, and we're sending a lot of surveys on very specific topics right now to our internal team to see, what does your home office look like? What's missing? What would make this really comfortable for you? So we're trying to get ahead of this, knowing that for our business personally, I think remote's going to be an option moving forward. And again, I agree with Lisa on a very one-to-one thing. I think we'll always have our home base. As you see in Jess's picture, a beautiful office space. But I don't think it's going to be this mistrust of, can we be productive?
Yeah.
And I think this is where,
but the individualization, right? Listening to your teams, over communication, allowing transparency from your staff to senior leadership to really understand what they do need to be successful, whether that be technologically or personal, and they're going to be the best advocates, because, the more supported they feel, the more effort, the higher the productivity is going to be, and the more loyalty you have between your employees and, their brand they're working for.
So, and there's a lot of operations that have to go in there to set up the policies and procedures to be remote. There's a lot of homework that starts now to get us when we are, say it's September that, everyone goes back to work. Use this time now to start looking at policies for onboarding new talent remote.
Yeah.
How to do policies for check-ins and employee handbooks. I think it's a nice challenge, but I think it's going to at least make it easier to make that transition when we get there.
It's interesting. This touches on a thread from one of our community members that asked a question. It's Liz Trowler, and we're all probably experiencing this, which is Zoom allowing us to be more productive, right? And the thread I'll put there, and I want the community you guys to chat on it, is folks that used to work from home were used to setting up conference calls all day long. They rarely set up video calls. It was a conference dial-in. And now the default is, let's have a Zoom call. And my question is, are these face-to-face calls like meetings were in the office, where they're just less productive and we're just all staring at each other? How do you guys feel? And then the comment would be this idea of Zoom fatigue. I for sure feel it. I don't feel like I'm energized at the end of the day. Can you guys, a lot there, but we'll love your guys' thoughts on that.
I'll step in quick from a business development position and someone who's always worked from home. I think it's been great because people are home, and as far as getting in front of clients or partners that maybe there was distance that was a challenge before, or people were just super busy, or I couldn't get a face-to-face interaction. I've been able to do that a lot more now. But I do think that there is this, I'm exhausted at the end of the day, because as someone who's working from home, always, I was used to a lot of conference calls that maybe didn't need to be video calls, and now everything is a video call, right? And it does slow productivity a little bit. So I think there's a twofold to it. Is like, I think I said this last time we chatted, is right now we're all like Zoom, 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 but I think it will even out once we realize like what is needed as a video call, and what is like maybe an initial call is a video call, right? But then we move to conference calls from there. So people that maybe don't need to be so engaged in the conversation can multitask, or don't feel like they need to be on, or it's tough having 6 faces staring at you constantly, and making sure that like you're engaging with everybody. It's almost like giving a speech in front of, an auditorium.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Slack, I mean, there's other tools like Slack that can pick up the communications. As a digital person to begin with, the web team and marketing team have always used Slack as a communication, and there's been a lot of training and adaptation to get the rest of the company really using it in a useful way, and really seeing the power of being able to keep conversations very tight. It's easier than sending an email. My inbox is empty right now, other than external emails. There's no internal emails going around. I actually, many years ago, had a CEO who banned internal emails years ago, very ahead of the curve. He said, get up and walk and talk to somebody. Don't send a thanks in an email. That just wasted my productivity time. But Slack has been a great resource for us to make that decision of what needs to be a call and what can be a chat conversation in a special channel. And I think you're right. I think this is going to level out, but I think people are going to start realizing Zoom for this type of conversation, Slack for my team to do the daily updates, to have records of things, to have files that you can share. And I think it's a balance of learning all your communication tools and create a playbook for your company. What to say on what platform. We were getting a little crazy with GChat and Slack. Now it's Slack only. Let's bring it all together and create a best practices for how to communicate as a company.
Julie, I could not agree more with that. And I think it comes to us kind of enforcing and setting the example. Like last week, I looked at my schedule one day, and there were 2 meetings on there that were 30 minutes long each. And I looked at it, and I just Slacked both people, and I said, here's how I feel. Do we actually need this meeting? They both responded, nope, I feel like that as well. I agree. And we eliminated the meeting. Yeah. So I think if anything, we're going to learn how to be more efficient. I mean, how many pointless passive meetings were you involved in the office, right? That could have just been a Slack message. And to Liz, I'm looking at the comments here, and Liz, you talked about setting boundaries. And I think this is something that's really important right now, because you're right. There are people working all hours of the day because of children and whatnot. So I think a really important piece of advice is actually going back to your team, whether it be your senior leaders or the team that you're working with, and you guys agreeing to, these are the hours that we expect you to be available, right? And let's call it 9 to 5, however you want to say that. And if you are going to be unavailable, just communicate. Send a message. In Slack, you can put like in a meeting or not available right now. And it's just retraining your team on your personal boundaries. And then it's actually really important that you as a person don't have the guilt, right, of I have to be on, because so much of this is self-imposed, right? Like we talked about this on Friday, how a lot of us, I think, can relate that our self-worth is tied to our productivity. And we feel like that if we're not constantly on, we're not good enough. And that's not true. And I invite you to really explore where that comes from. Is that pressure you're actually genuinely getting from your higher ups, or is it self-imposed? And if it's self-imposed, you got to rewire that neural connection and set your boundaries. Otherwise, you are going to burn out.
That's great.
And
I'm feeling so good right now.
And I've seen a lot of our partners really enforce this mental health opportunity, right? Enforcing days off, implementing half-day Fridays, because take a break just wasn't enough, right? And again, it's back to this. We've seen a lot of companies thrive during this, and then we've seen a lot of companies struggle. And it's when you're when you're a high growth performer and you want to see your company be successful, you put that pressure on yourself. You're right. And I think acknowledging that people have a hard time doing that and saying it's okay to take a break and we're allowing you to do that. And maybe it's Fridays off for the month of May or half days, or maybe some companies can't afford to do that. But it's just, again, that empathy and opening up that conversation to say it's okay to take this time, not you should fear using your PTO or taking a mental health day.
Absolutely.
Jessica, are you saying that people might not initiate that question to you, so you as the leaders may have to just offer that, almost giving them permission?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are losing their jobs or people are making cuts, and I feel like I can't take PTO, right? And this is just not necessarily a personal feeling, but it's just what I'm seeing in the industry, right? Like it's this personal fear, and no one's giving it to you. You just feel it. You're putting that on yourself. So to have senior leadership or upper management say it's okay to take that time, we all need to take that time, use your PTO, encourage mental health days, or offer a half day a month or whatever people might need, which our company does offer our employees to take one half day a month to use when you need it. And I think right now more than ever, using it for mental health time or just to step away is really important.
That's great.
That's really powerful, and you guys are on it and looking at what's coming in the chat stream, because I would say most people are looking at PTO as vacation and not necessarily as a mental health kind of vacation. And that's a really interesting insight we have right now, where it's right on. So great question, Natalie. Lisa, on your end, there was another question that came in around, if you have somebody that is showing signs of less productivity, how do you broach that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's just coming again. I always take the personal approach. Like I don't just go in and say like, hey, I've noticed you've been not as productive. I just say like, hey, how are you feeling? What's coming up for you right now? Like, and I get curious, right? And then I think it comes back to recalibrating with expectations, right? So if people are really clear on what their expectations are, you manage the expectations, not the time card. And I think that when you have clear expectations, then you are able to actually provide feedback that is very, very like poignant. And hey, we're seeing that you're actually not hitting all your priorities. What's getting in the way of that? And then you work through it, because it might be personal. It might be, something related to not having the right training. I don't know. But I think the key here is making sure that each week or even daily right now, like connecting with your team. Hey, what are your top 1 to 3 priorities today? And then the next day, hey, were you able to get those done? If not, what got in your way? Where was your focus yesterday? These are questions that, again, communication and check-ins might be a little more frequent now, but they might be needed as we acclimate to this remote work, and people who aren't the type that actually thrive in a remote independent work environment. And again, it might just be training. It might be providing that supportive, like, what can we do to help you, be more productive?
I think it's also a lesson in, I do a daily stand up with my team every morning. And it started, initially the way that we had in the office. What are you doing today? What did you do yesterday? It is completely morphed now into more of a good morning, let's have coffee. And I can sense as their manager energy. And then, really lean into making things very manageable. One thing that happens in remote space and all of this time and productivity is you can get very distracted with work itself. Someone wants help. I've now spoken to almost every individual member in our company, which didn't happen when I was in the office, our sales team, our recruiting team, our operations team. And I think, I want to help everyone everywhere I can. And then you have to stop back and say, whoa, those aren't the 3 priorities I really needed to get done right now. So when it comes to your team and managing someone who might not be super productive right now, break it down into the little pieces, right? It doesn't have to be this overwhelming. We're not going to save the world in one day right now. We're not going to save, everything that we're doing in one day right now. Let's look at the priorities. And we've been trying to break things down into immediate impact. Optimization is level 2. And then strategy is the kind of the third one. So what are the little tiny pieces that we can break down? And that helps with some productivity to make it really manageable to get someone through a day and not have the world, if you don't hit this deadline, we're going to miss it.
Yeah, and Julie, to your point, I would say like we all can read each other energetically, or we get intuitive hits. So if you get the impression or the feeling that somebody isn't being productive, don't push it under the rug. Get into conversation right away. And again, approach it from that, I'm here to support you. Like, I know this is a challenging time. Like, what isn't working for you right now? Instead of like,
the most impactful leaders I've noticed just from watching the leaders in our company and the leaders in some other companies that I have friends in, is the leaders now are really stepping in and rolling up their sleeves too. We're in this together. I really respect the leaders who are getting involved, who are picking up the phone, that are calling, that are also part of this. This isn't delegation time of you do this and I'm going to sit here and, kind of watch all of you work. This is, there is something really nice about leaders shine, of how they're emotionally keeping their team intact, how they're helping their team with production, and also, making sure that the vision's really clear and keeping everyone, looking to the same North Star right now.
It's something that we talked about a bit, and I've been thinking a lot of, is, do companies come out stronger from this? Both, the makeup and the culture, are there positive impacts from all this that when we start to have some normalization that we'll be able to look back and say, oh, that was good?
I think so, because I think while this is a horrible pandemic and there's a lot going on, it's a pause. It allows us to evaluate everything. It allows us to evaluate our personal lives, our work lives, and where your vision of your company. I'm watching brands really go back to their purpose, really going back to what started, what need did this brand fill in the universe, cutting back a lot of fluff, cutting back a lot of marketing copy. And as a marketer, I'm number one violator here. I think authenticity is not just the word authentic. It's not the buzzword authenticity. I'm talking about really being honest. And I think those values come out with better products and better experiences. I mean, customer experience, employee experience is the future. I mean, it's really where we're leaning in. It means you're listening, and it means you're creating a feeling and not a tangible thing. And I think companies, businesses are going to be evaluating how they've worked in the past. We had to change, and I think there's going to be some great change made from this. Better products, better environments, better company cultures, and better policies.
It's going to take strong leaders to do that, and if you don't have the leaders that are willing to make the change and willing to listen to the good, the bad, and the ugly from their employees, right? And really have those open communication and transparent conversations, they're going to be lagging behind, because the bottom line is things are changing. And if you don't step up to do it, you're going to be that much farther behind all the other brands that are really taking this opportunity and finding positives out of it, and growing with their team, and listening to what people need and want, and what consumers want too, because that's part of this as well.
Yeah, one thread that I'll just call out, and it's a compliment to the panel here, is, the Force Brands, it seems that you guys have a coach that was on full time for the executives, and Lisa, it looks like you guys do a really good job at encouraging that kind of better you mentality instead of better company mentality. And I guess, what would you say to other leaders and HR professionals around, starting that culture of, transparency and authenticity and true, heart to heart conversation, that, how do you kickstart that for people that don't have that culture?
Want to jump in there? I don't know if anybody wanted to jump in. I do think it's going to expedite the process if it comes from senior leadership leading the conversation, leading the charge. And like, one thing, I actually got this idea from a conversation on Friday with this incredible group of people, but these mystery coffee dates.
My favorite. Coffee with.
So great. And like, what if instead of that, like, you have your CEO or the C-suite having these really candid conversations, and you tee up the conversation of like, hey, this is a safe space. Like, we want to hear from you. We care about you. We know that happiness is the most important thing, right? Happy employees are productive employees. So I would just encourage, like, you don't have to have this huge elaborate plan. Just get into conversation and actually create the psychological safety, right? You actually have to say, you are safe here. I want to know, because I care about you and I care about the organization. Like, what do you need? So start there. And then, there's we could talk for hours about it, but that would be my
example.
You have to take the fear out of the conversation, or you're never gonna create that culture, right? Like, you have to take the fear out of it. I mean, one of our brands actually had some of their board members join their daily roundup and open that table up to conversation and questions. And that's a behind the scenes look at what's going on further than senior leadership. So I think again, back to what you're saying, Lisa, is really creating that environment as a safe place to communicate to start, and your employees really believing it.
And it's communication. I mean, one of the things that I'm noticing is, we do daily, 2 times a day, West Coast, East Coast, sometimes all together, sales calls, but other people are invited to join in. If the recruiting team wants to sit in on sales calls, I'm marketing, I sit on every single sales call twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, because I think you get the real deal of what's going on.
Yeah.
You see everything you see, placements that we have to work on. I see, companies that we're talking about that are doing exciting things. But I think by leading by example, and I do put this to leadership, on be you. You can't be authentic and just keep saying the word authentic. It's what you do, or it's what you do, not what you say. And it's also not what you say, how you say it too. Yeah. I think you have to be very self-aware as a leader in these times about how you're talking to your team. And if you are saying that you're including them in the conversation, you have to include them in the conversation.
So we have 4 minutes, guys. One more question came in, and I'm going to leave it with a sign off. But it was, what is this mysterious coffee break, Lisa? So talk about this. What is exactly going on here, and what is the tips you can give?
Well, I'm going to actually I think, Julie, it was your idea, and I actually took it, and we're implementing this week. So Julie, you'll probably be a better source.
So every day, every Monday, we get a mystery invite for coffee with ... You don't know who in the company you're going to be meeting with. So on Thursday or Friday, you just log into your mystery Zoom link, and there's someone sitting there on your team. And our back end team is doing such a great job of finding pairs that have not connected. We have a large team. There's a lot of new people that I have not had time, to have a one-on-one with. And all you do is have coffee, and it's whatever you want to talk about. I've had a couple chats where there's a little bit of work talked about, and I've had a couple of chats where there's no work at all, and it's how's your dog doing? We bring the dogs up and they have a chat. But I encourage it. I think it's just use this time and the fact that everyone's open to chatting and connecting to really build that trust within your company. Get people who don't talk, get the senior leader and the junior coordinator to have coffee. You'll find a lot of mentors within the company, and it has nothing to do with someone's skill set and what they do for the company.
And that's the best part. Senior leadership is participating. So you just never know when you're going to get the opportunity to talk to them and learn about something about them outside of work, right? Because that's that interpersonal connection, I think, that keeps culture going.
Someone just asked how they do it. IT, our operations team, our office manager, office assistant is the one who's facilitating that with our Zoom login. So encourage it. Basically, you just make 2 individual links and send it on people's calendar, or you just don't put the other person on the invite. 2 invites, 1 link for that meeting. Super simple.
So we have 2 minutes left. I want to kind of end with a little nod to Ellen and everybody here. Maybe just share what they're grateful for on this Wednesday as we come through the week here. So I'll start. I am incredibly grateful for everybody on this panel for making this really easy. So you guys are so talented and so smart and have so much insight. So thank you for that. And Julie, go ahead and take it off, and we'll go one by one.
First of all, grateful for health. I mean, this is a scary time out there. But grateful to be surrounded by support and open conversations. I love what's happening in the world of people talking. And, I'm not watching that much TV. It's all with friends and family, and you're just communicating. And I think that's really powerful right
now. Ellen?
I am grateful that I have this forced downtime, and I am also grateful that, again, with this conversation, that we're talking about, fear, and we're normalizing it, and we're putting it out there, and that, again, as we started, we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. And even though we're in different boats, I'm just grateful that we're all riding the storm side by side in our different boats, but the same storm. Yeah. And feel very encouraged that just after talking to all of you, and I'm very grateful that our culture is going to change. Talk about crisis. The change that's going to happen is our culture in all of our businesses are going to be better just from what we're practicing right now.
Jessica?
I am grateful, first of all, for this panel and being able to participate and working for a company that allows me to participate and have these open, candid, transparent conversations. I'm also grateful for this downtime because I get to spend it with my parents. And how often do you get to have a month or two? And even though it may drive me crazy sometimes, but to really spend quality time with them as they're getting older, right? And looking at the silver lining there, that I have that time to spend with people.
Lisa, bring it home.
Bringing it home. Yeah, I am just going to echo what everybody said. I love the vulnerability on this call. I love connection. And likewise, I know that I will never probably get another opportunity to be with my children for this amount of time. So as much as I'm pulling my hair out, I recognize that this is a very unique opportunity to bond with them.
I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your wisdom, and everybody that logged on, thank you for participating. We would love to hear from you. Any feedback you have, if this is resonating, let us know. And if you have any ideas of what other content you want to hear as we transition from lockdown to back to work, let us know. And we want to be here for you. So thank you guys. Truly a great opportunity, and looking forward to more.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
We did.